Justice, justice, where are you?
Hey, welcome to Justice Served TV. I'm Michael Bryant. Hello there, Kenney Baden.
How are you? I mean, that was a short version of us.
I know. Sometimes I just like to mix it up.
Yeah.
That was
See if you can get us off guard. I can tell. I know
Yep,
you.
I know.
You're a jokester.
But you're already
figured out.
I couldn't pull it off though. You got me. All right, so we are in the midst of amazing interview week. We had Dayton Carney on Monday. We had Melanie Little on Tuesday. We had Mark Betterow yesterday, and today we have a guy. You probably know him from a couple of cases, and I want to get an update on one of them because I can't imagine what may or may not be happening. But this is the guy who knows all things Fulton County and even in the Georgia broader area. And apparently he's about to leave town because he's in his car.
The mobile studio.
Doug Weinstein is here. Doug, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are y'all? I am in the mobile studio. I didn't make it out of court in time, so this is what you get. The mobile studio.
We'll take it.
We love the mobile studio. Michael Bryant's always in the mobile studio.
I love the mobile studio. Yep.
Yeah.
So before we get astray onto other things, I was going to check the mail, and I said, I wonder what's going on with CASOTUS. If something has happened, is there an appeal, a new motion for new trial, anything going on there with your client? I don't believe anything new is going on. I think the motion for new trial has been filed. I think it was filed almost immediately. As far as I have heard, I haven't talked to Katie Hingerty, his appellate lawyer, recently in the last week or two, but I think she's just waiting for that to be calendared. Okay. And then I will be put on the stand by Miss Hingerty and thoroughly grilled. That will be fun.
I can't wait. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Let me just say this and get your take on this in the light of a lot of cases that we've had the new trial motions filed and people seem shocked when they're not granted, right? Donna Adelson just had hers, and I think people need to understand that it's pro forma for all practical purposes, and it's done so that you can then preserve whatever those things are for the appeal, which is what it's all about. Have you ever had a new trial motion granted?
I have not, but of course my experience is more limited than most people my age in this area. But I can tell you in Georgia, it's very rare for a new trial to be granted. And as you say, it's about preserving things in the record and setting things up for the appeal. So I wouldn't expect it to be granted. It would be wonderful if it would be, but I wouldn't expect it to be. But she'll preserve everything, and then the appellate process continues.
Yeah, I should have set up Mr. CASOTUS. I kind of assumed everybody knew who it was, what the trial was all about. What was his first name? Was it Nick?
Nicholas.
No. Nick. It was Nick. So accused of and then convicted of in the death of his wife. Was she? They were together still. I keep getting confused.
Oh yeah.
They were together.
They were together. Okay. They were together. She had said she was pregnant. She was not. And Mindy Mebane, his second wife, Mindy Mebane CASOTUS. They were together. They were living with her parents in an Airbnb in Savannah at the time of her death. Right. Yeah. So they were not estranged at all.
Okay. So anyway, he got convicted pretty quickly, as I recall.
Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that.
Sorry.
Reminding your audience that it took all of about 70 minutes to convict my client in that case.
Sorry. Well, if anybody convicted your client, it was your client. So that's not on you.
That's what happens. I always say that when the client gets on the stand, and you know this, Doug, in your training and all, no matter what, civil case, whatever, it's all about the client. Everything else goes, sideways, upwards. You start thinking sideways. It's always about the client because that's it. Yeah.
Not to speak to this case in particular, but as soon as your client takes the stand in general, all the good work that you have done pre-trial, during the course of the trial, all of that is out the window. And the entire case is now on your client's shoulders.
That's it. And any jury consultant, every jury will also tell you that as a lawyer. And
sometimes they're just laser focused on what's happening at that time. Let me ask you this: have we talked about the Donna Adelson lack of her testifying? I can't remember when we last spoke.
Before we go there, just for because we try to educate a little bit too on this channel. These motions that are preserving the rights, they're preserving everything but constitutional issues. If you have a constitutional issue and you are dumb enough not to put it in your motion anyhow, or you don't know because you didn't realize it was a constitutional issue, that is still preserved. Somebody can go in and say that this should be overturned because there was a violation of the federal constitution. It doesn't usually apply to state constitutional rights, but federal constitution. I always make a motion, and I know you do too, to federalize all objections, so that I just want to cover my bases, which means that anytime you make it, you're assuming that there's a constitutional basis for it, so that in case you forget to put something in your motion, you've already federalized as a constitution.
Right. And along those lines, like when you're convicted or if you plead guilty, the judge always reminds defendants here that on a felony you have 4 years to file a petition for habeas corpus. So your constitutional rights are there. You don't lose them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Donna Adelson. I don't remember if we've had a conversation since her decision not to testify. Have we? We haven't talked about that, have we?
We haven't, and I'm totally and completely unprepared to speak about
Okay.
that.
All right.
I will say this: I had to watch some of that trial, right?
Yeah.
Quite a bit of it, and do people think it's a mistake she didn't testify?
Well, my focus was on your reaction, if you saw any of this, to her reaction to the ultimate verdict, and the processing of in her mind, people are thinking she's saying, I know I should have testified, and there was that very weird hemming and hawing where she kept begging the judge for more time to make a decision, and then when she finally answered the question, she said, "At this time. I'm not going to testify at this time," as if she was leaving that door open. What do you read from that when a client treats it, so that decision in that way?
This is total guesswork, having seen that. I am guessing she really, inside in her gut, wanted to testify, and her attorneys successfully and wisely talked her out of it. I mean, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Maybe the jury deliberations would have been shorter if she'd have testified. But,
3 hours. Yeah. Okay.
That's my guess too, Doug. That's my guess also. Right. Right.
So I'm guessing that was a way of justifying to herself that, she'd come to this conclusion, but still wasn't happy with it.
Yeah. I really think she felt that, when we've looked at her video of the day before the jury convicted her and then the video after, it's very clear that she was deluded about her chances of winning with or without her testimony.
You have a picture of that, right?
I don't think it's uncommon for some defendants to believe, despite the weight of the evidence, despite the way a trial may have gone, that they're going to get that not guilty from the jury. And I think you'd probably need a psychiatrist on the show rather than me. But I think people can, over time, they convince themselves that there's no evidence here. I mean, I hear it all the time from clients, right? There's no evidence here. There's nothing here. I'm not going to get convicted. Why should I plead guilty? I'm sure she had convinced herself over the years, hey, I had nothing to do with this. And I suspect she believes she had nothing to do with this. So why should she get convicted?
And she probably felt with each successive conviction ahead of her, Sigfrido Garcia, the trigger man, Luis Rivera, the guy who helped the trigger man, and then Catherine Megman-Waugh, and then her own son, she probably felt more and more insulated, from what happened. Which
is the opposite of the way she should have felt. Because what she should have felt is she's standing on the shoreline watching a tsunami roll in. And as really, it's an interesting tactic that I've talked to some other people about, where the state seems to have used a progression of trials to essentially climb the ladder and build their case against successive defendants, which is why I think so many people think Wendy is next, right?
Yeah. Well, before we move on, let me share this with, if you haven't seen this, because we did have the video from both the day before her conviction and the day after. The slight difference in the way she looked, left side pre and the right side post. And so to me, I think I've described it as delusion on the left and reality on the right.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think for any defendant, a conviction is devastating. And I think some people thought she was putting on an act when that guilty plea came in. I mean, I don't think it was an act. I think she was genuinely shocked at the result. She had convinced herself she was going to get a not guilty verdict.
Yeah.
That is pure guesswork, and I don't even know why I'm guessing it. But that is what it seemed like to me watching her.
Yeah, and the reaction was more about anger, not sorrow, or people kept saying there was not a tear. Well, I think she was just mad that she was convicted.
Probably so, but I also don't like people trying to tell folks how people should feel and how people should respond in certain circumstances. You get a lot of that when you watch feeds of trials. People are always criticizing the defendant's reactions frequently, right?
Or lack of reaction.
Or lack,
right?
yeah. Why isn't that defendant crying? Why is that defendant responding to testimony in that way? If you're a defendant and you're sitting in trial, I mean, you guys, I hope you agree with this. You're being scrutinized all the time, and you're just going to feel how you're going to feel. And if you put something on for the camera or for what you think the jury's going to want to see, I think that's not going to come across as genuine, and it's probably going to hurt you. These defendants in these cases, they've seen this evidence against them for forever. It may be new to the viewer, it may be new to the jury, but there's relatively nothing shocking that is presented in court to the defendant. And I think you can become numb, inured, hardened is the wrong word, but you're not going to be surprised by what you hear. So people are going to respond how they're going to respond, and I wish people wouldn't criticize folks for that.
Yeah, it's also like the evidence of when you see people where they were told they were dead, and they didn't cry. Well, some people don't cry. Some people are just stoic. Some people bawl their eyes out. Sometimes it's how you were taught. Sometimes it's how you lived. It's how your parents lived. It can be ethnic. Sometimes people don't want to hear that, but that's the case. So I always hate that kind of evidence. Well, they didn't act like I expected them to act. What did you expect them to act like?
Yeah.
Well, they expect people to act like they would act, or how they think they would act.
Yeah. In the Nick Casotis case, for example, I saw a lot of online criticism. At the time that his wife, Mindy Mevin Casotis, was murdered, Nick believed, because Mindy had been telling him and everyone else, that she was 8 months pregnant. And during the course of the interrogation of Nick, they tell Nick, oh, your wife really wasn't pregnant. And people weren't happy with his response to that. I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to respond when you've been arrested for the unaliving of your wife, when you have been sitting in a jail that's loud and noisy and you haven't gotten sleep, and you're told totally out of the blue that your pregnant wife wasn't pregnant. I don't know what a proper response to that is. And I think, frankly, he did look surprised, but still, I don't know how you're supposed to respond to that. You can't make
I think the thing with the Adelsons is that they've seen people have seen so many trials, and then the evidence kept getting better, and that's this whole tickling the wire. I don't know if you follow this, but the tickling the wire. Whoa, we have seemed to. We're gonna have to add him back to the stage.
Yes, he's come and gone. What happened?
He came and gone. I don't know. I mean, I add him back to the stage. He came back in. And he's in the middle. I don't know if he can hear. But Doug,
let me see if I can bring him back in.
I think if he can hear us, he has to get back off and go back in. Completely get off and go back in.
It looks like a signal thing.
That looks like a signal. Should I remove him from the stages right for the moment?
Yeah.
I think we'll remove him from the moment.
Because we'll see him on the we'll see him backstage when he comes back in full.
Yeah. But he's isn't he great how he explains things? I mean, I can't wait to come back from his mobile studio, because the way he explains things, you like, he's so, he explains
professorial.
Professor, there he comes. He's back in the stage.
Let's see, are we ready? Should we? Well, there he is.
There he is.
I don't know. We'll blame Verizon on that one. How's that?
Yeah, all right. Are you in a remote location? You said you're by courthouse, right?
I'm not in a remote location. I've got great signal. I can actually. I'm looking out my window at the cell phone tower that is serving me right now.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're
Yeah.
great.
That's
But
technology.
we were
Now,
complimenting you.
by the way, Fani Willis would say, just because I'm pinging off that cell phone tower does not mean that I'm actually here.
There
So
you go.
I could
That leads us
I like that
early.
segue. I like that segue
We'll
for you.
pass our rip and read for a while. I think that is a lead into one of the things we want to discuss, even though there's a lot of other stuff in rip and read, which we'll bring you in anyhow. Definitely. Fani Willis. Okay. Why don't you give, for those who don't know who she is and what that alluded to, why don't you give
Sure.
us the backdrop?
So Madam DA Fani Willis is the district attorney of Fulton County. And it was her office that was prosecuting, at the time, former President Trump, but now President Trump, on a RICO charge, along with how many defendants? 15, 20, 180? I can't keep up. And she and her entire office were disqualified from that prosecution. And we can go into details, but it has to do with her hiring her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, out of private practice to run the prosecution of President Trump. And there's so many angles we can go to in all of this. But anyway, she was disqualified by the trial judge, kind of even more disqualified by the Court of Appeals here in Georgia. Her office appealed that disqualification to the Georgia Supreme Court, who voted to not even hear the case.
Yeah.
So
and that
her
was just
disqualification remains.
about a month ago she got that word, right? Early September.
It was mid-September. So I'm going to say
Mid-September?
about 2 weeks ago she got the
Okay.
final word, that disqualification is final. So now
Hubris.
it gets tremendous. It gets tossed over to PAC-GA, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, and Pete Skandalakis will have to appoint a new prosecutor to continue that case.
And is that?
Are there a lot of people lining up for that?
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, I don't,
pro hac vice? Is that? I mean, they do have an option of just dismissing it and ending it, right?
They have the option, if they can't find someone, or even if they do find someone, that prosecutor can elect to not continue the case. If they can't find someone, or if he just wants to do it, the head of PAC-GA could prosecute the case. It's fair to say that prosecutors are elected officials, and no one wants to touch this case with a 10-foot pole. And I'm sure, this case is radioactive. No one wants this case, which, to me, as someone who thought that the acts of former President Trump did merit some form of prosecution. Not a RICO charge, which was ridiculous, but some form of prosecution.
You're familiar with that.
Yeah, I am. I am familiar with it. I understand its attractiveness when properly handled by a prosecutor. But I'm disappointed in this whole thing. DA Fani Willis took what I think was the strongest potential case against former President Trump and completely mishandled everything about it.
She helped get him elected, Doug, with it.
She did.
It was so absolutely ridiculous to go after him.
She helped him. She helped him get elected. She mishandled the indictment. She mishandled the appointment of people to prosecute the case. I think she more than likely lied on the stand when she took the stand in the course of Ashley Merchant's amazing motion to have her disqualified.
Typical man.
Yeah, there you go. I think Nathan Wade more than likely probably lied on the stand. So just a tremendous disservice to justice from so many angles, no matter which side you were on. If you thought President Trump did nothing wrong, if you thought he did do something wrong, it was just completely, the British would probably have the right word for it. It was just bollocksed up. So,
yeah.
Oh, that's a great word.
And so just on the 28th, 29th, she was subpoenaed, right? Now she needs to go provide information about her travels, I think is what they're looking for. Is that right?
That's a whole different issue. I am sure that our new ethos in the Department of Justice, the old what would it be? The old procedure policy of we don't prosecute people, we prosecute crimes. It seems to be somewhat out the window at the DOJ these days. So she clearly is a target, I would imagine. They have subpoenaed travel records. I don't know why. I don't know what the federal accusation would be against her. I'm assuming the best that I can guess is it would be some form of misappropriation of federal funds that flowed to that office through COVID funding. And I imagine there's going to be some kind of allegation of, I don't know, I'm guessing, right? So some kind of allegation of her using those funds and the hiring of her boyfriend or perhaps the travels. I don't know.
I mean,
I think
consistent.
that's consistent. I agree with you 100%. I think that's the easiest place to look, because we all thought that she used, well, if she's using her funds in her office.
She did reroute funds that were going to her office to his salary.
Certainly.
And a lot of it was forfeiture money, which is not supposed to be used for salaries. And that's, exactly
but
what she did.
what if some of it, they can trace some of being federal funds to the office, because everybody gets fedral funds. Well, I guess that would be the allegation.
Well, money is fungible, right? So if it comes in from the feds, I mean, the state of Georgia provided extra funds to the county to help clear out backlogs. So money came into the office from all kinds of ways. Did she mishandle it? I have no idea. I don't care. Look, I think Fani Willis should not have been reelected as the DA.
That's three of us voting, and I'm a Democrat.
And we didn't vote. We didn't vote. You voted.
But I was not living in Fulton County at the time. I will be living in Fulton County as of October 15th. So I will get a say in the next election. I'm moving. So a very short distance, but I could throw a Frisbee and hit Fulton County from my house. So
it's interesting though, Doug, what you say about prosecutors and all, because we've been covering the case. I know you don't really know it, but this Aiden Carney case and the whole idea, but the same question, there's a case that there's a conflict. There can be no prosecutor. No one wants to take it. And that's what led me to Bukkake Ducksworth. Does Doug know the Aiden Turboy case? You can answer for yourself. I know.
Yeah,
I have not followed the Turtle Boy case. I know who he is. I know his relationship to that whole, was it Karen Reed? That whole mess up in Greater Boston. I followed a bit of that case, but if I recall, there was some. I didn't follow it in the depth that I could have.
Well, there's an issue of the prosecutors having to recuse themselves and who will take the case, and no one wants to take the case against them. There's one case because it's so ridiculous, and who wants to get involved. It's almost like the Fani Willis with Trump. You're gonna raise your hand and say, "Yeah, pick me."
I mean, the case against Trump, I think, President Trump, the indictment is a mess. He and his co-defendant should never have been a RICO case. It's far too complicated, far too lengthy. Georgia's RICO statute, you guys know what I think about it. I think it's absurdly broad. Right. I was telling people, I was trying to give an analogy back during YSL about this case. I think that if you are in Georgia and if you said publicly, say on Facebook, I think that what President Trump did in calling the Secretary of State and demanding the finding of votes, you could argue that that is an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy, just supporting that, the way Georgia RICO law reads. So anyway, I don't think they should have used RICO. I think there were plenty of other statutes they could have used that would have streamlined the case. And anyway, so back to the point. The indictment's a mess. Who wants to touch that indictment?
Right. Fani seems to be enamored with the whole RICO statute. Obviously she tried it. For those who don't recall, Doug Weinstein, full acquittal for his client Diamante Kendrick in the YSL Young Thug case, which was based primarily on RICO. And so then she at her about the same time, I can't remember which one was first, tried to apply it to Trump and the election scandal, as it were.
Yeah.
So what's her why is she all spun up on RICO?
Well, it's not just her. It's all I won't say all, that's too generalizing too much, but most prosecutors in Georgia are very spun up on RICO. And I think it's for two reasons. The RICO statute is very broad in Georgia, so you can bring in lots of people. PAC-GA, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, and their CLEs preach about the value of Georgia's RICO statute because in the word, you can find their PowerPoint presentations online. They say it allows you to tell the whole story. And another reason I think they love it is most of the hearsay rules go out the door because everybody
co-conspirators
is a co-conspirator. Yeah, they'll say it's a statement of a co-conspirator, so therefore it's not hearsay. So they can bring in all kinds of evidence that would normally not be permitted absent RICO, absent conspiracy charges. They can backdoor in evidence.
That's amazing that they're teaching it. They're proponents of it. So that begs the question: are there any success stories in the prosecution of it?
Sure, there are. There's tons of success stories in prosecuting people under RICO because the statute is so broad. They're able to get the state attorney's office, local prosecutors at the county level are able to get a lot of not just convictions, but pleas when you face this, because it is so difficult to defend a Georgia RICO case. So I think right now maybe I only have one at the moment because I'm very leery of RICO cases because I don't want to get stuck in another 2-year trial. But I do take them on, and the state is very successful with these RICO cases, but just because they're successful with it doesn't mean they should use it all the time. And I think it backfired in YSL. It obviously backfired in the Trump case.
Yep, no doubt about it. Along that line with your case, although as I'm pulling up the decision that we're going to talk about lyrics, there is a question from Kay Lala. Can Doug update us on the status of the Cop City case? Do you know anything about that?
Well, Judge Farmer here in the Superior Court in Fulton County has been handling that case. And Judge Farmer he's a great judge, by the way, but approximately 2 weeks ago, he determined, now just to back up, the Cop City RICO case, that has to do with, they probably indicted 50 or 60 people who were involved in protesting the construction of a police training facility in Fulton County that has been nicknamed Cop City. They didn't just indict the actual protesters. They indicted people, for example, who were doing fundraising to support legal funds to defend the protesters, something that our country has a tremendously, positive history of going back to the 1960s and probably earlier, where funds were raised to support people protesting discrimination and racism. So anyway, it's a really broad RICO, but it was not brought, even though it's in Fulton County, it was not brought by the Fulton County DA's office. They were smart enough, I think, to not bring that case. It was the state AG's office under Chris Carr that brought that case. And what Judge Farmer decided about 2 weeks ago was that the state basically didn't have the jurisdiction to bring the case because they had not dotted the I's and crossed the T's, because they did not seek the governor's permission to bring that case, which is a fairly, standard, almost ministerial task that they could have done. I'm sure, I would imagine the governor would have given Chris Carr approval to bring the case. But since they failed to do that, I think Judge Farmer's case.
Wow, that's interesting.
What was the protesters' beef? What was everybody protesting?
Oh, we lost Doug's sound.
We lost you.
We lost your sound.
Wait. Can you hear me now?
You're back.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
I got you.
I'm sorry. My car cut off because I took my foot off the brake. The Judge Farmer dismissed that case. Now, I believe there may be some counts still pending, but the RICO count's gone. It is hanging on by a thread, as well it should be. I have no sympathy for I have a lot of friends defending the Cop City case, and good for them. Good for the protesters, I suppose, but I'm not a real fan of the Cop City protesters personally.
So just so I understand, because I've kind of gotten muddled in this, the protesters wanted to prevent it from happening.
They were doing all kinds of, they were doing all kinds of acts to obstruct. There was some arson involved.
Okay.
There were a lot of things going on with that. They weren't tremendously violent protests, but there was some violence as part of it. So, you know, a lot of Birkenstocks, a lot of patchouli going on there. And I mean, I get it. And they had the right to protest.
In other words,
Woodstock
mixed with J6 a little bit.
Well, a lot of the protesters weren't from here.
Professional protesters.
You know, I guess in the 60s they'd call them outside agitators. But you know, it was a legit cause. What you really had, I mean, I had a lot of issues with the Cop City construction. So, for example, you had kind of environmental racism going on. They're building it in a part of the city that is traditionally underrepresented. You know, they would never have built Cop City in Buckhead. They were destroying a lot of forest, a lot of natural forest in order to build Cop City. So it brought a lot of different groups together that align themselves. And then, of course, you have just general anti-law enforcement folks that were involved. But regardless, this was a ridiculous charge to bring. You don't go after people fundraising to help protesters. It just goes against everything our country is about.
Right.
That's not why Judge Farmer threw it out. Judge Farmer threw it out because Chris Carr's office, who, by the way, let me say this too, because while I'm kind of dumping on Chris Carr's office here, in my experience being up against the state AG's office under Chris Carr, they do a wonderful job and they're really, really good lawyers. So I'm a little baffled how they made this mistake, but they did.
So as I pull up People versus Reeves, I want to just go back and have you finish answering the one question about Fani Willis and you being under the cell tower right there. And she would say that you would not be there as I'm bringing up the lyrics that we're going to be talking about, lyrics case that we're about to be talking about.
You mean, why do I say that about Fani Willis and the cell tower?
Yes. Tell everybody why. Because it's not an inside joke. This is really.
No, it is kind of an inside joke, but it's public and it's something that I have focused on because I think it's indicative of kind of an après-moi le déluge attitude of the office. In other words, you know, burn everything down to save myself. In the course of Fani Willis fighting the disqualification, her office, the Fulton County DA's office, filed, I believe it was an opposition brief, but it was a brief to the judge saying, look, I know you have this cell tower data showing my phone being in the area of Nathan Wade's home, but this isn't a reliable indicator that I may have been in the area. And, you know, that paragraph, that argument goes against, I'm going to guess, 60-70% of the felony cases that are brought in Fulton County, where the Fulton County DA's office uses cell tower data to locate defendants at scenes of crime. And now her office has gone on the record saying, hey, you know, that's unreliable. So in every case I have in Fulton County, I cite that paragraph. I cite that paragraph and say, look, the DA's office themselves say that cell tower data is an unreliable indicator of location of individuals. And I am astounded that she would weaken her cases that her office is prosecuting in order to save herself for the disqualification. I think it's really a terrible thing to have done. And one reason she shouldn't have been reelected.
What a perfect
along
example.
I'm sorry, Michael, I said along with not giving documents over, right?
We can go on and on and on.
I mean, it's a perfect example of why you don't shit where you eat. You know, because she gets so involved with somebody in her office, that's what spiraled out of control and led to that kind of arrogance.
It's almost worse than being involved with somebody in your office. It's taking someone that is not in your office that you are involved with, and now you're bringing them into the office And I think purely so that they can profit from
Of
this
course.
position.
Yeah, not even to mention how unqualified he was for the role. Had zero experience in RICO. He did some misdemeanor work as a criminal defense attorney. I mean, just
I
just
paid $1
from
million, if I
from the very
recall.
beginning.
That's
just
more
have
than
it.
in Karen
it,
Reed. That's more than in the whatever you think of Hank Brennan. At least he had experience for his
such a
$600,000.
scam.
Yeah,
Such a scam.
yeah. And I don't
I
think, by the way, I don't think you necessarily need to be a former, well, I think this is exhibit one. I don't think you need to be a former prosecutor to be a DA necessarily. That is very much a managerial position. So I think if you are an intelligent person, if you have legal experience, if you have litigated, if you've been in trial, and you can manage people, I think you could probably do a good job as DA. But this is someone who had tremendous experience. Fani Willis was supported by the criminal defense bar to take this position. She's far better at it than her predecessor. But she just screwed it all up for, I don't know what motivated her. I mean, we can guess, but she made a tremendous mistake with the strongest case in the country against former President Trump.
Well, along that line, question. Has Doug ever heard of a witness in a case suing the prosecutor and the DA while the case is still ongoing? Ever heard of that?
I've
In
not
any
heard that.
case.
Is that ongoing somewhere?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's what's happening in the
Is
Aiden
that the
Carney
Aiden-
matter.
Yeah.
They never heard any place else.
I
And then the
mean-
Deer Beach caregiver, our nurse wants to follow up about things that are happening in the world, and this you will have heard about.
Rice
Any
Street,
updates
yikes.
on cleaning up or tearing down a Rice Street? Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting on that. Well, obviously, Rice Street is now, there is someone overseeing Rice Street who was jointly agreed upon by, eventually by a federal judge, but all sides agreed on someone who's overseeing it. There's a website you can, and I wish I remembered the website name, but if you Google Fulton County Rice Street consent order, I think you can find it where everything is being posted regarding that case and the status updates. And there was a fairly recent report that came out about a month ago that I had tremendous plans to do a TikTok series on, but got sucked up into about 3 murder cases with Bruce Harvey and wasn't able to do it. But you read that report about how poorly run Rice Street is, all the issues they're facing. So updates on it. This is a battle with the Fulton County Commission involved, with the sheriff's office, with judges, trying to figure out what to do about Rice Street. I think everyone agrees something needs to be done about Rice Street. And the question is, some people want to tear it down and rebuild it. Other people want to refurbish it. Some people, are just opposed to enlarging it because why are we detaining these people? Why are we not giving bond to so many of these people? Why do we have this whole issue of nonviolent folks being denied bond? So there's so many things, so many constituencies wrapped up in Rice Street. I don't know eventually what's going to happen with Rice Street, but something I think will happen.
Who was running it before? You said somebody else is now. They've put in somebody who's
well. It's still being run, but it's still being run by the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. But you've got an overseer who is providing reports and giving recommendations. I think what really has to happen is there needs to be an order from a federal district court to the Fulton County Commission to spend X amount of dollars either tearing it down or refurbish. I think it has to be torn down. I think it's decayed to the state that facility needs to be completely torn down and rebuilt. When inmates or incarcerated individuals have to use portions of the building in order to create shanks to defend themselves. When you have one deputy overseeing an entire pod where you should have multiple deputies, there's not enough funds going to the sheriff. I honestly think, I know the sheriff has misspent some funds, but I think Sheriff Labatt has done probably the best he can given his limited budget. there's so many problems there. But I think it's going to take a court order for a new facility, for proper funding, and frankly, increase taxes on the residents of Fulton County to pay for it. If you want to, in Fulton County, elect judges who do not give bond, if you want to elect a prosecutor who insists on no bond in so many cases, that costs money, and it costs money to incarcerate those people. And you're going to have to pay, and I guess now myself starting next month, we're all going to have to pay more money if that's what we want our policies to be within the judiciary.
And there's a federal report out there too, prior administration federal report, right, about Rice Street being like the worst facility in the United States. I mean, I think they've got some competition with Rikers, but you know,
I think right behind Rikers, you've got this as one of the worst jail facilities in the country.
Yeah. Thank you, Madeira Beach, by the way.
I'm surprised. I just took a quick look here. It was built in 1989. That's, I got the sense it was, more like the French Revolution. I mean, really that kind of dungeony old, but that's not all that old. Holds, it says, up to 1,125 prisoners, but they're at about 3,000. So,
well, part of the decay is not necessarily due to age. It's due to the fact that they do not have sufficient supervision, sufficient deputies within the jail. So the folks that are incarcerated there are able to tear the facility apart. And on top of that, there's insufficient maintenance. I'm an engineer, at heart, and entropy is the nature of the universe. Things want to decay. Everything wants to fall apart. That is what your house.
I'm trying to go against that.
If you're a homeowner, or even if you live in an apartment, but if you're a homeowner for sure, your house wants to decay. If you leave it alone and come back in 50 years, it won't be there. Rice Street is no different. And when you have insufficient money to maintain the facility and you have insufficient supervision, then the facility is going to decay, even though it's only 35 years old.
Yeah, and the decay, I think of it, having owned a lot of properties that I rent out, renters don't take care of property. Can you imagine prisoners they're incentivized to trash the place out of frustration, out of anger, whatever it may be. They ain't taking care of their homes.
Yeah, they are not. And by the way, a lot of them have no choice. If you are in there and everybody has a shank, you better have a shank.
Yeah. And we saw that in the YSL trial where, people were, even your guy, he was attacked, in the week before he was acquitted, right?
Yeah. Oh, I saw somebody texted about the Wolfenberger trial.
Yeah,
you have to have me back on for that at some point. That's a whole nother mess.
Yeah, and very interesting because I had blurbed a book that was being written by Cheryl McCollum and it looked really interesting and good. And then I watched the trial, and while her book was good, it was terrific. But I watched the trial, it was nothing like there was all this other stuff. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it.
Are you talking about the Wolfenberger case?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Wolfenberger case.
Yeah. That was a cold case that, just for people watching, if they don't know, that was a cold case that Fulton County brought after about 20 plus years after the I assume a murder. I watched a lot of that case. I actually walked over to the courthouse to watch some of it in person because I wanted to learn a little bit from Don Samuel. And every witness the state presented was more likely to have done it than the defendant.
It was interesting. Mitzi, make a note about that because maybe we'll have you talk to Cheryl. Maybe there's other sides of this story. But yeah, when I looked at it, for people that don't know, the father of the victim was a serial killer. The mother of the victim, who wanted the cold case solved, had helped the father, her husband, kill people. Right. And they even killed friends. It wasn't like, close friends.
No.
And then there were other people involved that were you couldn't make it up. You couldn't every witness on the stand. You couldn't make it up. It was oh my goodness gracious. And then the incompetence also of the police. It was incompetence. It
was a mess. It was a mess. And I did eventually learn why they brought the case, but I can't discuss it. But it's crazy that they brought this
Oh,
case.
I know why they bought the case, because I've read the draft book that Cheryl's writing, so I understand
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy they brought the case. And
but that person didn't testify. That's what I look at, right?
I know.
Well, Doug and I know we're talking about. We can't tell you yet because
but
it's out, and
if anyone, I know some people say they watched it on Kat's channel. It was, and yeah, I did. Don't get me in trouble. I saw Dizzy tweeted that or put on the text here that in the chat that I had live tweeted from the court, and it is true. At some point, I did, without a Rule 22, live tweet from the court, because it was just. And they present, so much was going on in that case I'd love to talk about, because they also had on their domestic violence expert, who I think is just a terrible expert. I had her in another case, and I had a lot of fun with her on cross. But
we'll have to do a show on it.
We'll have to do a show on it. But that case was, and it's a terrible situation when anyone's. No one deserves to be murdered. It's a horrible thing.
A young woman, right?
But this case should never have been brought.
Every murder's a problem.
Yeah. And by the way, some of these things make Fulton County look incompetent. Fulton County DA's office. And let me say, on high-profile cases, of course they've screwed up. But all in all, even those that have not quit that office yet, they have some really good prosecutors there that do some really good work. So the whole office isn't that way, but they've just, unfortunately, on some high profile stuff, they've really not done a great job.
Well, they've come across some really good defense attorneys like yourself. By the way, my sister's in the chat. And for those who don't know, for members only, I did post a video of Joan and I was down there in New Jersey. I think it was only yesterday.
It was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday.
Only yesterday, yeah. So if you're a member, you can go see some of those incredible videos of my sister. So that brings us back to New York versus, and Missy, I need help getting my slide up because for some reason now it's not going up. The case.
Which slide are you?
There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Court of the state of New York.
Wow. I love this decision. I love this decision.
Talk about it. It's from New York State, Staten Island, Kings County, and it was on appeal. I'll just do the setup on appeal where a conviction was had by an investigator interpreting rap lyrics, right? And our intermediate court, our appellate court, immediately said, "Oh no, he's not competent. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The lyrics have a lot of different things, and the investigator's interpretation of the lyrics reflected, inherent ambiguity. I think it should be inherent ambiguity of himself not knowing what he's talking about in terms of rap lyrics. But that's not. They didn't quite go there, but they sort of went there. Doug, talk to us.
Well, so much in this case. So the state, or I guess they still call it the state in New York.
Yeah, it's the people they call it, but it's the state.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll call it the state because I'm going to mess it up if I call it the people. The state wanted to bring in a rap song that was at least partially authored by the defendant in the case. And the judge essentially said, well, if you bring in an expert that can talk about the lyrics, then I'll let it in. And then the next morning, the state's like, yeah, we don't have an expert that can do that. And the judge said, is it Judice? Am I pronouncing that properly?
Judice, right.
Yeah. So I'll just call him the judge. The judge says,
right,
you have 10 minutes, really said this from the bench. And this is a judge that gets overturned all the time, by the way. The judge said, you got 10 minutes to bring an expert in here, or you're not going to be able to use your rap lyrics. So I guess they go out in the hall and go to the DA's office and grab whatever investigator was unfortunate enough to be drinking coffee at 9 a.m. in the office. I mean, that's from what I can tell. And they bring this poor bastard in, and I kind of feel for him a little bit. I mean, no, you shouldn't test about shit you don't know about, but he has a job, he has bosses, whatever. So they bring this investigator in. They voir dire him, or voir dire him, as we call it sometimes in Georgia. So they do the voir dire of him, this rap lyric expert. And he's like, well, look, I'm a gang expert, but in the course of being a gang expert, I listen to some rap music and I think I can interpret it. So I think I know enough about what's going on. And despite that, really, he didn't even pretend to know rap lyrics, honestly, in the voir dire. But it was enough for Judge judice or judice, whatever he is. It was enough for this trial judge. The judge is like, boom, you're qualified. Which, you guys know, anybody that sees me on here knows that junk science, misuse of Daubert, bringing in experts that are not really experts, bringing in experts when you don't really need experts. All of these things it's one of my pet peeves. So here we have the great crossing of my hobby horses, junk science and rap lyrics.
Right,
Two things I never like to see in court, and they come together right here. So the judge, and stop me if I'm
No,
going on too much.
I'm not going to repeat the lyrics. I mean, I
Yeah, I
kind of
don't
put
need
them
to
up
repeat
there.
the
People can kind of see them on page,
Yeah. So
5 of the slide.
the judge lets him testify. So he gets up on the stand, and of course he's totally unprepared, but he gets up on the stand, and the experts, the investigators' interpretation of the rap lyrics changes over time, for one thing. It initially starts out not really related to the case, and then on further and further examination, direct examination, wouldn't you know it, that the lyrics magically converge upon the state's theory of the case. There was a cross-examination. I think on cross, the defense attorney did the best they could, given the bullshit being spewed by the gang expert, by the rap.
The quickness, right, that they was brought on. There was supposed to be an expert.
Yeah. So of course, you got no expert.
Oh, we lost Doug again.
He's coming and going.
It's hysterical that he's next to the Verizon. He said the Verizon tower, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. He must have
He's
T-Mobile.
coming back.
Are you there?
He's going to come back. He'll come back. He has to get out of the studio.
We talked about this when the YSL trial was underway, how ridiculous it was that it became a huge part of the YSL trial, those damn rap lyrics. Just ignoring the fact that these are creative either lyrics or music or combination of the two. And it doesn't necessarily mean anybody acted consistent with the damn lyrics. It's just, to me, it was outrageous. Let's bring him back in. There he is.
I'm sorry, guys.
There's no problem.
I put it on Do Not Disturb, but my wife is an exception, and she called, and so it rang through, and then I get disconnected. So anyway,
no worries.
They're not prepared. I'm going to keep going because I'm on a roll now. So there's no expert report to go from, so they're doing the best they can, but so it's all such horseshit anyway. But let me tell you, okay, so if people don't know my position on rap lyrics, it's artistic expression. I don't have a First Amendment issue with it. I don't think the First Amendment bars it. All kinds of speech comes in against people all the time. But when you have artistic expression, it tends to be fictional. There's this assumption that rap artists cannot write fiction, that everything must be autobiographical, it must be real. And then you have an expert that is clearly not an expert. And because they did this, by the way, the defense, in YSL, we had experts that we were prepared to present in our case that could talk about how rap lyrics work. They could talk about that they're often fictional, rhyming patterns often dictate words being used. There's a lot of double entendre that comes in, and triple entendre. As a matter of fact, that is a motif, a theme that runs through rap lyrics. The best rappers are the ones that do double and triple entendre. So producers get involved in changing lyrics. Studios want to see, all of this comes in. So thankfully what we have here, and this is a great opinion because the appellate court said, look, there was enough evidence here to convict this guy. So in Georgia, by the way, that would be enough. But here in New York, they said, look, in the interest of fairness, because this expert was not qualified, he should never have been qualified, should never have passed voir dire. We're gonna overturn this case. We're gonna throw it out, and that was the right decision. Now he didn't throw it out The appellate court did not throw it out because the rap lyrics had no business coming in. I wish they would have said that.
Yes, that
They
would have been
didn't.
better. Yeah.
I would have loved that, but I'm not going to get that, not yet. But he did say, look, this guy was not qualified, and he clearly wasn't qualified.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
too
so
bad. I mean,
thought-
because that's the way you're going to distinguish that case if you're coming up against that same battle, and somebody's
Yeah.
going to throw that case in your face, and you say, well, hold on, that wasn't about the lyrics per se. It was about the expert being the guy they grabbed down the hallway, not having,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And and honestly, another issue I'm constantly frustrated by is the DA's office bringing in experts who work for the DA's office, or experts who are employed by law enforcement, the very same office that is investigating the case or that is prosecuting the case is somehow allowed to bring in experts. Now, of course, on cross, we can bring that out, but something about that just feels wrong. It would be like my putting someone from my office up on the stand. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we
Well,
have that
now
here too.
let's get us back to 3 people here. Let me see. Michael Bryant, I'm going to have to let you.
I got you.
And we're going to pray that my wife doesn't call in the next.
Well, I hope everything's okay.
Yeah,
with
but
that.
I
It was
thought
just-
when I first saw that the rap, I said that this is Doug. This is it. Can we
Yeah.
talk Diddy a little bit before we
let's do that.
have to shut down? Because I know.
Yeah,
that's one of
let's
our
talk
topics.
Diddy for a little bit.
Yeah.
So we
Uh,
just to lay the parameters for that.
Yeah.
He was convicted of the two Mann Act violations, max 20 years, 10 each. My position has always been it was never intended for the kind of thing they've alleged, and the jury found that he did. But I get it. The question really becomes: is he going to be punished for other things that are outside the Mann Act violation and conviction? What are your thoughts?
I think he is going to be punished for other things that are outside the Mann Act violations. I think that I don't even think it. You can read what the government is putting forward as far as their recommendations, as far as their calculations, and they're bringing in, and unfortunately they're allowed to do this. They're bringing in all kinds of things that he was not convicted on. I don't think the public really appreciates in federal cases how the government is allowed to bring in acts that you were found not guilty on, and they can use those in enhancing the sentence. And that's what's going on in the Diddy case. I mean, don't you agree, Linda?
Yeah, absolutely. I have because I've represented clients in federal court just like you. I have a real problem with bringing in not guilties on it, and they do all the time. And here, and there's a bigger issue. Reading the judge's denial, Judge Subramanian's denial of the motion, where he basically has said a number of times how violent Diddy is. I think it's coming in. I think that he's going to say that Cassie video, which you, by the way, we couldn't prosecute you on this. The government couldn't prosecute you on this because you hid the evidence past the statute of limitation and you're violent. And I think it's all coming in. And I initially thought with like Michael, he should get 7 years, but I think this judge is going to whack him for 15 years.
I think he gets 11. I think this, and I think this
prosecution.
Yeah, that's what the prosecution asked for. I don't think he'll go beyond that.
Okay.
But he's going to not only give him 11, I think, he's going to explain how warranted it is. And this judge is letting people, and of course, there's no case law that bars this. We need a lot of fixes in the sentencing system in the federal system. But they're going to bring in people that are not victims on these charges to testify at the sentencing hearing. I think that's totally inappropriate. I had that actually in the Casotis case, which that's not federal, but they let his third wife give a statement. His third wife, Mr. Casotis' third wife, was not a victim of this crime. There are other issues there, but not that. But anyway, every time the defense tries to put forward a motion to bar certain testimony from coming in or does certain calculations, I mean, the judge rules for the government every single time. And I think that's partially because, honestly, that's the way the case law is for a lot of this.
And also it was part of, I think it kind of like it had a disgust factor to it. But the jury heard the disgust factor, and they still only convicted on
Yeah.
they didn't take all those in.
Exactly.
But someone like 50 Cent,
50
who
Cent. Oh, I have that letter. Do you want to look at that? I mean,
yeah,
his
let's take a
post.
look at it. 50
Yeah,
Cent,
before,
who's been saying that Diddy is a pedophile and this and that for many years. They've had this beef going on. Wrote a letter, so we have that. We have
yeah,
that.
and before we do look at that, the judge gave us a clue when we went through the multiple bail hearings that they kept bringing after being told no, 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 and he
Yeah.
used those prior bad acts, as I can describe them, to keep him in jail. So we
Yeah.
already know the mindset of the judge.
Which, by the way, I mean, I think the defense counsel did a really great job throughout this case, but the risk of I tell my clients this, the risk of constantly talking about bond is it gives the prosecutor an opportunity to parade all this crap before the judge over and over
Right.
and over again before you even get to trial.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
So any
Over- and the public
predisposition
and
is
the
even
public, the
bigger.
judge and the public,
And the
right.
public.
Yeah.
And the public. So you have that letter from 50
Yeah,
Cent?
so this is 50 Cent to Judge Subramanian. I've had an ongoing dispute with Puffy for over 20 years. He's very dangerous. Multiple times I've feared for my life. I think you should consider the safety of the general public, Your Honor, before unleashing him upon them. There hasn't been enough time for him to reform or make any adjustments, despite his trying to teach a class in there. As you are already aware, the government has spent the maximum amount of money on deploying federal agencies, which appeared to be an army, in 2 locations simultaneously. Later, his son, who's dealing with his own rape allegations, claimed that the feds had hit the wrong house. Anyway, Diddy's only going to return to hiring more male sex workers and keeping most of the baby oil away from the general public, and babies need it. My Netflix doc on this scandalous subject turns it into a promo. My Netflix doc on this scandalous subject is coming soon. So, do you think that has any impact on what the judge might do, or is he just being 50 Cent?
He's just
Being 50
venting.
Yeah,
He's
but I
just
love
venting.
I love 50 Cent. But Hassie wrote a letter, and she is one of the victims. Wrote a letter saying she fears for her life that if he doesn't come after her. So,
But there was the other quote unquote victim who said, look, the prosecution has bullied me into claiming that saying I was a victim. I never felt like I was a victim in any of this. I let the prosecutors know I didn't feel like I was a victim. I was ready to testify and say all of that, and then they didn't put me on the stand. So, look, he was convicted of these Mann Act violations. He should be sentenced for these Mann Act violations. To bring in all of these other issues, which they are allowed to do, I just don't believe I don't believe it's appropriate.
I think it's
the
wrong.
system needs to be reformed. I don't care about any of this other stuff.
Yeah. And I'm no Diddy fan. I think he's a horrible person, done some horrible things. But I'm looking at the law. And it starts to me with the Mann Act, which was never intended for what it's being applied in this case, where we have willing adults, not kids, not slaves, which were the original reason for the Mann Act. And they're just getting him it gave the jury something to convict him of.
He is a disgusting and can I just say this? He is a disgusting and horrible human being who abuses women and God knows who else. So
no doubt about it. But I also think by doing it with the Mann Act here, these were willing sex workers that on the counts he was convicted of, and I think that we've demonized sex workers, and I think it's wrong. If you want to be a sex worker, you should have the right to be a sex worker. Right. And I asked you this, Doug, and I asked this question that was asked of me, and I didn't have an answer. Well, how does this differ from a movie studio bringing in porno workers to do a porno film? And I said, well, those are simulated acts. And people say, are you crazy, Linda? Are you like an infant? Saying that?
Well, that's what Diddy tried to argue, right? In his, I think his motion for a new trial was that essentially he was acting as a producer, creating pornography,
right.
And therefore it shouldn't fall under the Mann Act. And I think if I read that opinion, I don't remember the detail, but when I read the judge's opinion on it, it actually sounded well reasoned. There is a way to distinguish between prostitution and pornography. But why do we even need to have that distinction? I do want to say one last thing before I dart, which is that I think Brian Steele, who I am honored to call a friend and a mentor, and I think he did a wonderful job with bringing forth the work that Diddy is doing, where he's being held in the classes and teaching other people. I think that's a perfect example of don't tell me what a good guy Diddy is. Show me the good things he did. Show, don't tell. So Brian bringing that forth and showing the judge that, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, obviously the team did an amazing job because the 2 convictions were really the least of any of the penalties that he could have suffered. So
yeah. Now I don't know why they need 4 attorneys to speak tomorrow. Did you see that?
Oh no, it's going to be a long hearing.
It is,
and I'm trying to decide whether to get up at 5 a.m. and go or not. It's still early, too early to tell.
I think the public needs you there, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael,
thanks for that.
So before we shut down, I know you have some final thoughts on the whole federal shutdown. I know it's affected my cases. I'm not even allowed to talk to a judge, text or email a judge's chamber. And I have clients now who are saying, wait, what do you mean you can't find out what my case is going to happen, on civil cases, right?
I have a federal case that is supposed to go to trial October 20th. And look, the prosecutor is still, the AUSA is still working and he's getting paid. The judge is still working. But there's a lot of other factors. For example, the government has material witnesses. They don't even know if they'll be available. They have no money for travel to get to the trial. They've got like a dozen witnesses from all over the country. So even though when you look at like the rundown in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times about what's operating, and they're like, okay, the prosecutors are operating, the criminal trials are operating. The reality is they're not really going to be able to functionally
support
operate.
Services don't exist.
Witnesses, support services, the judge's clerks, the staff, a lot of these are young people. They can't afford to work for free. They can't afford to shell out expenses and not be reimbursed. So I'm just looking at anecdotally one trial, but I have got to believe it's rippling through the entire system on this shutdown. And I don't think this is going to be a short shutdown. So it's going to affect a lot of people.
And that's just on the criminal side. On the civil side,
civil side is
we're going to be like the pandemic.
Yeah,
civil is shut down.
Distant second.
Civil is shut down, but criminal is theoretically operating, but not really operating.
Yeah.
Except for Diddy tomorrow. This is operating.
It's operating.
They not stop it. And then there's an exception to in line item said. Well, Doug,
we'll see what happens. So just to confirm, I still say 7-ish. Doug, you think they'll go with 11, the max for the prosecution? And Linda, what do you say?
I think the judge might even go beyond that.
Go beyond that. So we have a very interesting mix here. Okay.
I can see your position, Linda, given how hard he's come down.
Right. That's what I'm
going
thinking.
for 11.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see
We
what
got
happens.
a good spread here.
We got a good spread.
What's the bet?
Spread.
What do I win? What do we win?
Yeah. We have any wagers here? I got a mug. I got
wait
a
a
mug.
second. Wait a second.
You guys sent me a link. I have to find my link. Maybe you can resend it for swag.
Oh yeah.
The swag. You didn't miss it. You didn't use your swag link.
It was like it was crazy September. So anyway,
Missy's
we'll reset it. Missy and Dizzy.
Because then I can drink it in court and I'll show it
There
off.
you go. And
Okay.
Say, I get
we can
that.
show you off.
There you go.
Drinking it.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Apologies to your wife. Hope we didn't cause
Go
any
eat.
problems.
Go have some food. Go have some food.
Okay. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Take care, bud. Okay. Bye-bye.
I love him.
Everybody loves Doug. Come on.
I mean, just I just love because you can see talking
There
to
he
a
is.
jury
He's
how
over my
juries
shoulder.
love it, right? There he is. That's we put him in his red glasses there. Doug really needs like a to know page on Instagram where people can his glass company can support him and sponsor him because it's amazing. By the way, I did something with my computer, so I have lost all the comments here. I've lost all the
that's
comments.
Interesting. Let me see if there are any that I can see that we did not get to.
There's one I think that it's so big that I can't.
Did we get to this one? 5
see
Just
it.
to Serve TV memberships. We see that?
No, I didn't post that up.
Oh, that was us gifting them.
That was us
We
giving
have some.
memberships.
We have every month. We get to give some, right? Is that
We get
right?
to give some, right, and
Hey, thanks from us.
And then I think there's right, and they get randomly assigned, and then I think there's one more. If I'm looking out here,
This one?
yeah.
think
I don't
they'll try
know. Right now, my page is so big. Remember, I couldn't
You
see
think
the
you
other
try to
night
go
because
after Lou
there we
Taylor
go.
and Robin? Is this the one you're talking about? Robin
Yes.
Greenhill?
Oh, that's it. That must be the one because it was so big I couldn't see.
Do you have an answer for that?
No, I do not have an answer.
I do not
for
either.
That. I do
sorry,
not have.
Kate.
Well, I'm gonna have to, Kate. We're gonna have to get back to you. We do not have an answer for that. We should screenshot it so I remember to try to find it.
Okay, you're the screenshot expert. Get that. Get
Great,
that taken
thanks.
care of.
Thank you very much. And then, of course, today was a day, Michael Bryant, new nails. Talk
Look
about
at
fashion,
that.
new nails, right?
Look at
It's
that.
hard to see. They're a little
Quite the
bit,
process.
it's hard to process. They're actually beautifully done, beautifully made by Sora. I did have them cut. I told Joel last night I was going to cut down a little bit because I had broken one. But that's the month of October nails, because I know that eventually somebody will say, "Show me your nails."
Show
So
me the
show us your
nails.
And in our fashion segment
Oh,
of
no.
liking and subscribing and sharing and all that, we should mention that we have a lot of new things up on our site that you need to look at. And a lot of things coming this weekend. So why don't you do a little cross-pollination here of what people are missing?
Well, we got the comment show that will be coming tomorrow. We also have a Donna Adelson special that we did. That'll drop on the weekend, where we go over some of her phone records from the last 3-4 weeks since she was incarcerated post-conviction. Might be interesting to see who she's been talking to, who she hasn't been talking to, and we have some more materials coming from the Leon County Sheriff's in that regard, things that are happening with her in jail. So that's coming up. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something, but anyway, that's a little bit to chew on there. Check that out.
Yeah, and you're going to be breaking out some of the really important commentary that we had from Mark Betterow and from Aiden, and we really want to set up a Mad Lib show on that motion that Aiden was on the other night. It was so popular, and that's
I tried to get Mark Betterow last night to give us the stuff that was in the blanks, but he wasn't able to.
So
do that.
everyone wants a Mad Lib show, so we should do a Mad Lib show.
Okay,
we really
could be
should do a
dangerous,
Mad
but
Lib.
I'm in.
Okay, all right. Just let us know. We have to figure out what night next week we can do it, because all of you will have to come. You promise you come.
And contribute. All right, then. That's going to do it for us. Michael Bryant here, Linda Kenney Baden there. This is Justice Served TV, and please try to do it right.
It's on the sky.